How's it going, Giants fans? My name is Alex Wilson with a special guest today, Lawrence Tynes. Oh my God, I can't even believe I'm speaking to Lawrence Tynes right now. He's the man, two-time Super Bowl winning champion. You can see the freaking the Super Bowl trophies in his
Packed
background.
him
It's
up.
unbelievable. Yeah, packed him up, brought him home. This is definitely gonna be a fun episode discussing kind of week 2 against the Carolina Panthers, how the Giants can kind of pull out a win here. The offensively. Relying on Saquon Barkley maybe is the best way to go about this strategy, but at the end of the day, they need other guys to step up. So I kind of want to discuss who else could step up here and make a play for this team. Daniel Jones obviously missed a couple reads last week, but hopefully he corrects that. David Sills definitely could have had a couple touchdowns if he saw him. But I think he could make an impact in this week upcoming. And then, of course, the defensive side with Aaron Robinson out and kind of the cornerback depth and Dane Belton returning, rookie out of Iowa. So definitely a solid player there. But Lawrence, man, I appreciate you coming on. How you doing today, my friend?
Alex, I appreciate you asking me to come on. I'm doing great, man. Just getting ready. The Giants are 1-0. Everything smells better, tastes better, looks better when the Giants win. So last week was a good win. It was a good start to the year. We were due somebody to miss a field goal. It's been a while since anyone's missed a field goal against the Giants. So it was a good week, man. It's a good week. It was a good game last night, Chiefs and Chargers to kick off week 2. And I'm looking forward to this game against the Carolina Panthers. I know a lot of fans probably look at it and think it's a layup win, but the Giants have never had a layup win in the last 5 years. So we can't bank on us, just walking over the Carolina Panthers. They are an improved football team.
They definitely are, especially against the Cleveland Browns last week. I mean, they almost beat that team. I think it was 26-24. And Cleveland has a nasty pass rush. Of course, that, rookie offensive line, left tackle of Ikem Ekwonu, who the Giants were heavily linked to. But I'll ask you this, you mentioned the Chiefs game last night and the Chargers. Do you think that Justin Herbert should have been playing at the end there? Because I feel like he was badly hurt.
These quarterbacks are so tough, man. And what happens is, they should come out, but they don't want to come out. And so that's just kind of that warrior mentality that these players have. And obviously Justin Herbert proved that last night. I mean, the throw he made after getting hurt late in the fourth quarter there was insanity. But hopefully it's nothing too serious. Obviously he had to fly home. So obviously he was in good enough health to get on the airplane. You're thinking about ribs or punctured lungs, things like that. So obviously the x-ray was negative, but you know what, man, these dudes are warriors. Eli did it. These quarterbacks play with a lot of pain, so I don't know how they do it.
I mean, that game I remember against San Francisco, you guys played with Eli, playing through all those big hits that he took. After the game, was he ever just like laboring, just absolutely just crushed? Or he was just like kind of walked off the field like, all right, I guess I'm good now.
Nah, man, Eli was like, I didn't think Eli was human. I thought he was like a robot, because he never, you couldn't tell if he had a good game, a bad game, if he was hurt, if he wasn't hurt. Eli is a unicorn. He's like one of one. So, my locker was next to his for 6 years, and it's like I could never tell if he was hurt. Even when he was hurt, I knew he was hurt. Obviously, we'd have private conversations at times, but he just never even let his teammates know if he was hurting. He just didn't want his teammates to know because he didn't want to, have a built-in excuse. So that's why he's a man.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it kind of reminds me a little bit of Daniel Jones trying to pick up the slack last year in terms of like he would try to run the football. He would take big hits. I remember against the Dallas game when he was really messed up. And I'm like, I respect it, right? I respect the fact that he's trying to pick up this offense and do everything he can to put himself forward and at least produce some points, when they were really struggling there. And now you get Saquon Barkley back, right? Saquon Barkley had an unbelievable performance in week 1, 194 yards. All-purpose yards and a touchdown, a 2-point conversion, and they put a lot of faith in him. Now, my question for you is, do you think that they can continue to rely on him at this level, at this pace? Because I feel like at some point he's going to hit a wall. You can't expect him to have 30 touches a game and grinding out yards, lowering his shoulder. I feel like they need somebody else to step up here, whether that be Kadarius Toney, whether that be Kenny Galladay. Sterling Shepard's a guy I really think after his touchdown last week, I'm very optimistic about moving forward. Who are you looking at here and saying, this guy's got to pick up the slack. Someone's got to take the pressure off of Barkley so that he can really show his best self.
Yeah, and Saquon, there's no way, to your point, he can't have 30 touches a game. But, he looks like he's in great shape. To me, he looks a little bit thinner, a little leaner, a little faster, quicker. And obviously we saw that last Sunday. You got to look for the development of Bellinger at tight end. I think he can become a guy you can give 5 or 6 targets a game to as the season progresses. He's still learning pro football, and I think he could be a weapon down the stretch. I think Sterling Shepard's off to a fantastic start, which is good for him because everybody loves Sterling Shepard and knows his story and what he's been through. So, I would like to see Sterling Shepard. I mean, this Richie James guy is interesting. He's a dynamic playmaker. He's good in the return game. He's got some suddenness and quickness and in the slot. And listen, who knows? Maybe he's a 1,000-yard guy. He looks the part. He's been a very interesting pickup. No one really talked about him. He wasn't a big name, and obviously Daniel Jones trusts him. He went to him a lot in that ball game. And then obviously, it's funny. We've sat here and talked about all these players, and not one time have me or you either mentioned Kenny Golladay. That's embarrassing. But that's the reality of Kenny Golladay, right? He had 2 catches, was a non-factor in the game. And you just hope, maybe a light goes off because obviously he's making a lot of money.
Yeah, and here's the thing about Kenny Golladay, right? It's like I don't really necessarily think he's a scheme fit for a Brian Dable or Mike Kafka to try to do because you look at the Chiefs' offense; they have a lot of quick, fast receivers. And look at the Bills' offense; they have Stephon Diggs, who's a fast guy, very good route runners. Isaiah McKenzie in the slot. I don't think Kenny Golladay fits the mold. But that doesn't mean he can't be an impact player. The question is, how do they get him involved? Do you think he's more of a red zone target type of guy or someone that can move the chains?
Yeah, we're gonna have to, to throw the ball sometimes in the red zone. And so obviously you think Kenny Golladay would be that guy, 50-50 contested catches. But I'm not sure, man. I'm not sure how this thing plays out. I don't know if he gets dealt before the trade deadline or at the trade deadline at some point. If what is that, typically around week 8 or something like that?
Yeah, I think so.
It'd be a good time to move him, right? You lose some cap, but at the end of the day, if he's got 25 catches by then, what's the point of keeping him? So you move on and it was a Gettleman signing. So naturally he may not be a good scheme fit for Dable. But he's on the team. So I would like to see them figure out a way to use him. Right. But it takes 2 to tango. It doesn't look like he's particularly interested in, playing max effort. So we'll have to see as the season goes along.
Yeah, that honestly is kind of what we've seen from him, right? It doesn't look like he really is putting in the max effort, but obviously I want him to give him the benefit of the doubt at least to make an impact here. I guess the kind of concern is, like you said, the cap hit. Like if you trade him, maybe you get some draft capital back. End of the day, though, who's going to want him? Who's going to want a guy that has such a monster amount of money, $16 million a year? Like unless a team that's a playoff contending team has their big receiver go down, maybe that's the opportunity.
Yeah, and listen to he could, you never know. He could end up back in LA with Stafford with the Rams if something happens to one of their big guys. You're only really on the hook for the remaining salary this season. And then I think next year, obviously, there's no more guaranteed money left in his contract. So I wish that would have worked out, man. I was super excited when we signed him. And for whatever reason, it just hasn't worked out, So hopefully he can turn it on here late. I hope him and Daniel can build some rapport as the season goes along. And because I think he could really help us. I mean, Kadarius Toney doesn't play a lot right now. Hopefully he will this week. Obviously they had their reasons last week, but they still found a way to get it done. I think that's what Giants fans should be most excited about is they figured out a way without, outside of the big pass play to Shepard, they didn't really do a whole lot in the passing game. And so when Saquon's running like that, obviously you're going to win a lot of football games.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you mentioned Richie James before. It seems to me like Dable is preferring players who just show up every week. They're consistent. They practice. He's a special teams contributor. I think you had a good argument that Richie James actually may have a bigger role than we think here. He could be getting starting snaps every game, even when Toney comes back and plays fully. I think that Richie James is very much still in the mix, and that's kind of an interesting situation because who loses snaps in that case? Does Sterling Shepard lose snaps? Does maybe Kadarius Toney just loses snaps for Richie James because he was reliable? Daniel Jones obviously already has trust in him. I think that's definitely a big one. But I do also think that you had a point with Daniel Bellinger. He's a guy that I think we're all very excited about in terms of his growth and development. It doesn't seem like he's exactly there just yet. He's still very, very young as a 4th-round pick. Still learning the system. He's a very good blocker, and we know that. Receiving game, I think, just needs a little bit more to iron out.
Sure. Yeah, no, it's a difficult transition to play tight end in the NFL from college. So, the speed of these linebackers as opposed to what you went against in college is a completely different animal. And then you get safeties on top of you. So I think Bellinger is going to keep getting better and better, provided he stays healthy. I would love to see Kadarius Toney on the outside. If he can take reps from Galladay, that would be great. Kadarius can play out there. I know he's not 6'3", 6'4", but you know him. He's a dog. He's going to go play. He's going to play hard. And I would like to see. I think Kadarius Toney just has to be on the field. You know, if he's healthy, I would take Galladay off the field. I know he's making a ton of money. It doesn't matter. He doesn't help you win. And I would go, you know, some sort of combination of KT, Shepard, Richie, and the tight end, and just go from there, right? I mean, and then you've got Saquon in the backfield. So I like those skill players the best in terms of what the Giants can how they can line up. But the Kenny Galladay thing is just, it's almost like it's handicapping this football team.
Yeah, that's interesting. And, you know, David Sills even got some reps last week, and maybe
I forgot about Sills. Yeah, I didn't mention him.
Yeah. And he might take some snaps away from Galladay at this point. I mean,
tough
he
player.
has better
he's a
chemistry.
big guy. He's a red zone guy. I mean, we saw him go up and get a couple balls in the preseason, some back shoulder stuff that was thrown to him. So certainly, yeah, you know, I forgot about David Sills. I can't believe I forgot that. Yeah, he should, you know, in a perfect world, you'd love to have Sills and Galladay in your package on the goal line and pick your side, right? And then maybe obviously you got the run option and maybe a tight end. So, but Sills is a really, you know, he's a nice player. You know, we'll see how he develops, because he certainly took advantage of his opportunity this summer.
Absolutely. And Kadarius Toney in the red zone is something that I feel like not a lot of people have discussed. And I feel like with the way he moves in the open field, just get him the ball out there into space and let him work. He will easily score touchdowns. I guess the problem is he has to get on the field. I think he will play this week, hopefully. But, you know, the idea of him like in the red zone and like actually active and you know, contributing there could be a catalyst. But like you said, Kenny Galladay is just losing faith right now.
Yeah, it's just hurting the entire team, if you really think about it, right? You have this player who makes so much money that you can't cut him. And then he also doesn't really look like he wants to play either. That's a tough spot to be in, right, as a head coach and of a new team. But he inherited Kenny Galladay. And so he's putting Kenny Galladay on the field. So I think Dable obviously thinks he can help us. You know, if he's not putting KT on the field, he obviously thinks, you know, Galladay can help us, because I don't think the money's a big deal to Brian Dable. You know, he would sit him if he really thought he couldn't help us. So maybe that was just the way the Titans played us this week. We'll see. I watched a lot of that Browns Panthers tape this week, and you know, the Panthers are really good on defense. They got gashed on the run game a little bit on the outside. It looked like, you know, 75% of their yards were outside the tackles. The Browns ran outside the tackles on them. They had one big run to the other back in Cleveland. I can't think of his name. Kareem Hunt up the middle for a touchdown, but it was like, you know, in the red zone. But the majority of their yards came on the outside of that defense, which is where, you know, it feels like we like to run the football now. Even though Saquon was really good in between the tackles, that's where all the chunk yardage came from. You know, Baker Mayfield was not good. He was not good at all at that game. I had said earlier in the week he played okay. He did not play well. You know, this was before I went and watched the film. I mean, he had 5 fumbled snaps, 4 or 5 fumble snaps. He had a terrible interception. If you really think about it, he had 3 plays. He had the big play to Robbie Anderson. It was like 75-yard touchdown pass. He had a big chunk play to the tight end, Thompson or something like that. So that was about half of their total output on offense, those 2 plays. They had 260 yards of offense. Those 2 plays totaled 125 yards. So in 2 plays, that was, you know, in between that, you know, Baker Mayfield did not look comfortable. He did not play well. And it did look like he was trying to get the ball out quickly, but that's why there was a lot of batted balls. I think 4 or 5. And then obviously he had 4 or 5 fumble snaps.
Yeah, I mean, their offensive line's spotty. You know, Ike McConu's a rookie out there at left tackle, so there's definitely an opportunity
he got beat quite a few times.
Yeah. I mean, Evan Neal, you look at him at right tackle. He definitely got beat up a little bit, but really good in the run game. It's interesting. It's you know, this Panthers team is a different beast, right? Because you look at their receiver core compared to the Titans. They got DJ Moore, Robbie Anderson, Terrace Marshall. I think they have another guy too that I'm missing, but they have a pretty solid core. And of course, you have Christian McCaffrey. And you know, speaking, you said linebackers before. How do you stop Christian McCaffrey out of the backfield? Because I feel like one of those safeties has to step up. Maybe Julian Love spying on him and from strong safety. How do you think they stop that?
I mean, yeah, Wink's going to have to come up with something creative when he flexes out or bounces out to the outside. So, he didn't do a whole lot in the passing game. They tried to run a bunch of screens against the Browns. But, obviously that's a really good front seven that they have. So they were able to stymie most of those attacks. I could see a lot of screen game with Christian McCaffrey, and then if they're smart, I would definitely try and put him in a one-on-one matchup against one of our linebackers if they can, depending on the matchup. So that's easier said than done, right? Who do we put on him? It just depends on how they line up and what formation they come out in. That's the game within the game is,
Right.
you can't always say, yeah, safety's going to bump down here and take this coverage as opposed to what's the linebacker going to do? Go play free safety. So, but yeah, Christian McCaffrey's a problem. That's why he's a very highly paid player.
Yeah, that's facts. And, Tay Crowder, Austin Calitro, pretty solid in the run game last week, but definitely had their fair share. Dontrell Hilliard, I mean, I think he's the second string on Titans, and he definitely beat us up a little bit in the receiving game. But, Giants have another huge hole now with Aaron Robinson getting his appendix taken out. So, he could be out a couple. I don't know if you've ever had or know anyone that's had their appendix taken out, but I don't know how long people usually stay out for that.
No, I bet it's
weeks,
I mean, especially a skill guy like him. I mean, you're probably talking, Joe Burrow had his, right? So it was 3-4 weeks until he could start practicing again. I had a player early in my career with the Chiefs that had his appendix taken. I would say a month conservatively. I mean, you're talking about 4 games here. It's a pretty good incision. It's a real surgery. They're taking something out of your body. So 3 to 4 weeks, I think that's fair.
That's a lot. That's a lot to not have. I mean, oof.
He's played well. I know people have been over on him about his coverage, but listen, playing corner is a lot of things, and coverage is one of them. But man, the way he supported the run game last week, I applaud that. There's not a lot of corners that will come up there, and Adoree Jackson did the same thing, and that's probably the Wink Martindale type corners that he wants. Is Aaron Robinson saved a lot of yards last Sunday, a lot of football yards by coming down and entering himself into the run game. And he made some nice plays hitting a back that weighed, 50 pounds more than he does. And he's getting better in coverage. He had a solid game. He's not the best yet, but he's still learning. I just don't know who, listen, does Darnay bounce out there and play the outside corner? You mentioned Julian Love played it in college. I think in Wink's defense, he'll figure it out. He'll somehow, with the way we're going to pressure, I don't think guys are going to have to cover for a long periods of time. You just have to make sure you're in the right spot.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I probably think that Fabian Moreau gets called up from the practice squad. He had 16 starts for Atlanta last year, gave up like 570 yards and 7 touchdowns. So by those metrics, you can probably figure out he sucks. But but I'll say this.
He did suck. I always say, guys, this is a new year. I mean, it's a new year. It's a new opportunity for people. And you just never know how players are going to learn from one coach to another coach. So, and that's why, when teams sign players, people are always like, oh, this guy sucks. Well, you don't think the Giants knew that this guy gave up a world of yards and touchdowns last year? But some guys just take to different coaching and different schemes, right? Maybe this guy's a better scheme fit for Wink Martindale than he is in Atlanta. So, because if you're bringing pressure, you don't really have to cover that long. You have to be physical in the run game, and you have to be able to tackle in space. That's what you have to do if you're a blitzing defense. Your secondary has to be able to tackle. See, and that's probably what he likes. And you have to corners and DBs under this system. You have to tackle in space because you're going to get a lot of one-on-one catches that keep them in front of you with everybody else blitzing, and you have to make those tackles.
Yeah, and Fabian Moreau, I think he's 6 foot, 200 pounds, maybe a little bit heavier now. He's 28 years old. He's still young. I mean, I think Dable said that he actually had a really good practice the other day, and he's on the practice squad. Maybe Tony Jefferson gets called up as well. But Moreau, maybe he's like, you have a point there in terms of this scheme. You don't have to be in coverage for that long because eventually the blitz is going to hit home. I think they blitzed last week at 48%, which is the third most in the league. And Wink still was like, we didn't actually blitz that much. And I'm like, are you serious? That's insane. I mean, if you're blitzing at 48%, ranking third, I mean, I have to imagine they're probably looking at 55, 60% this week. Just going all out, putting the pressure on Baker Mayfield, making him fumble, like you said. Before. And, Moreau, maybe he's better early on in routes than he is later on in routes, so that might be something that he,
4 or 5 of those fumbles from Baker this week were just him in the center, quarterback center exchange were brutal. He just, I don't know if it's the new center. I don't know who this is, but 4 or 5 of those were just simply from, snap to the quarterback. It wasn't, there was 1 or 2 maybe where he got hit and lost the ball, but he recovered it. But I believe he was credited, Mayfield was, with 4 fumbles, no fumbles lost. So there's definitely an issue there with that quarterback center exchange. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you're putting insane amount of pressure, blitzing up the middle, doing all the things Wink Martindale does, that probably creates a little bit more confusion and a little bit more
and it might want to get him, get his hands out of there sooner. So we'll see. He was definitely, you could tell Carolina's game plan against Cleveland was to get the ball out fast with that obviously front 7 that Cleveland has. So that's where a lot of the batted balls came from. 1, 2. He was getting the ball out in under 3 seconds, under 2.5 seconds sometimes. So, and we know he's not the biggest guy, right? He doesn't see well over the line. So the Giants have to use all those negatives against him and somehow figure out, and they have to win this football game. They have to.
At
they
home.
have to prove to Giants Nation, the NFL, and themselves that last week wasn't a fluke.
Absolutely. And, I love how Wink actually came out yesterday and was like, guys, we got to get loud. We got to make them go to silent count. We got to make them do things that are uncomfortable. And ultimately, that's what's going to breed more mistakes, especially with that exchange you mentioned. If they don't know the count, who knows what happens there? So it's definitely a little bit of those kind of minute details that play a part.
I'm okay with coaches asking for fans to get loud, but you have to give them something to get loud about. And Giants fans are very, very smart. So they're going to get loud, but you better not give up 2 or 3 big plays early because, I'm not saying they're going to quit on you, but you got to give them something to get loud about. And so, I think the Giants fans will be excited, right? It's 1-0 for first time in a long time and playing at home. And who doesn't like beating Baker Mayfield?
Yeah. I guess everyone kind of likes beating up on him now.
Yeah. I like him. Crazy. I think he's funny. I love his commercials.
He is funny.
I think he's a nice player. But listen, the Giants are a better football team than the Panthers, and they should win.
Yep, absolutely. I do agree with that. And we also have Dane Belton coming back, rookie. So that's exciting as well. Some we're getting a little bit healthier. Kayvon Thibodeau and Azeez Ojulari getting healthier. I know Kayvon Thibodeau said yesterday that he thinks he could play, but I don't think he will. Probably give him one more week, make sure he's 100%. Go with Jihad Ward and Ocean Eximitis, who looked pretty good last week. I think he had 7 combined tackles, 2 quarterback hits, and a couple of hurry.
Jihad Ward was very impressive last week.
He was.
A lot of stuff that wasn't in the stat sheet, but the way he set the edge, the way he hustled, the way he played. Another, great Joe Shane under the radar signing, right? Him and Richie James, and 2 players that no one ever talked about, but they both contributed mightily last week.
Yeah, and speaking of, I know you mentioned before how sometimes players just do better in different schemes. He came from Jacksonville, like a very bad team in Jacksonville, and now he's looking good. So I guess sometimes it just takes a different system, a different.
I think he was with Wink. Maybe was he with Wink before though?
Before that,
okay. And then obviously maybe he got some money to go to Jacksonville, didn't work out, and now he's back with Wink. So yeah, I'm telling you, the players' skill sets, and that's why it's tough for us. And we're getting a little bit off topic here, but I hate when I see quarterbacks fail when they're early draft picks. It's not always their fault. It's a scheme thing. And, we always say that guy sucks or this guy sucks. Well, sometimes that's true, but most of the time it's a bad scheme fit. It's like Blake Martinez. He's a hell of a football player, great football player. He just wasn't a good scheme fit for what they wanted to do. And so, you hate that he's not on our team anymore, but Blake's going to land somewhere and play another 5 or 6 years.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm not even convinced that we had a scheme last year on offense at all. I mean, Daniel Jones, how do we really, really blame Daniel Jones?
I've never seen anything like that. I mean, I don't know how, if you watch film, I'm a big film guy. I could tell you what play they were running. I could, from my home in Kansas City, could tell you when I go back and watch the film, the tendency of what the Giants were going to run. It was so generic. It was so basic. But again, if you look at it, 4 of those 5 linemen that were, I think Billy Price just signed last week. But basically, to start the year, 4 of those 5 linemen were not even in the NFL.
That's insane.
That's crazy. And we were out there playing in the pro NFL with those guys. So on one hand, you can respect Jason Garrett for just trying to get the ball out of our hands and making, trying to keep people safe. And then on the other hand, we just obviously weren't a very good NFL. I mean, Eli Penny's not in the NFL, I don't think. Neither one of the backup 2 quarterbacks we had are in the NFL. I mean, that was basically a practice squad team we had last year.
Yeah, and what's even more interesting is, like, you think about Dave Gettleman before the season said, we have more confidence in our offensive line than you guys do. And I'm like,
Yeah.
did Jason Garrett really like agree with him? Was he like, yeah, like we
Well,
definitely are okay?
Well, sometimes executives speak to the players through the media, and you're just trying to encourage and be positive. I think, having talked to some people on that staff that I'm pretty good friends with from last year, they knew they weren't very good.
Okay. Yeah. I mean,
Obviously,
that's reasonable. Yeah. I
yeah,
mean, it's
they knew they
reasonable.
weren't. They knew they weren't good. They knew they couldn't do anything about it, and obviously they knew they had a stud in Andrew Thomas. But yeah, it was just a bad season.
Yeah. Well, at least we have a little bit more to look forward to this year. And the offense
Yeah.
definitely looks like a competent one, I want to say, so far. So we'll see what happens in terms of adjustments, see if the passing game gets going here in week 2 and the defense, continues to kind of grow and develop and mesh together. So I'm very excited about this season this year. And hopefully we just don't have to tune out by week 7 and we're like involved and we're competing and we're growing.
It would be nice to still be in it. Yeah, it would be nice to be in it even after Halloween, trick or treat, for God's sake.
Yeah, right.
Sometimes
Yeah,
we're out of it.
that's kind of scary.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you what, though, there's a lot of storylines that are unfolding right before us that are going to be big ones the rest of the year. DJ, what happens with him? Kenny Galladay, his big contract. Kadarius Toney, can he stay healthy? There's so many things. And Evan Neal's development. There's just so many things unraveling here that are going to set the stage for what will be a second year with Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen. And I'm definitely excited about it, man. This is a team that's on the up.
Should be.
I think.
Yep. I think the fans should be. I think, everyone out there should be, just enjoy the ride with Daniel. Listen, we all want him to be the guy, but maybe he is, maybe he isn't. We don't know. He's going to have to prove that. He's the one in the pressure cooker every Sunday. And he knows, listen, his 5th-year option not getting picked up. He knows he has to play well. And certainly we'd all like for him to be the guy. But again, we don't know. And there's a reason Joe Schoen is traveling the country looking at quarterbacks every Saturday in these college football games. So they're not convinced either. But, I'm not going to pick a side if Daniel is or isn't. I don't know. I'm the same way as everyone else. I don't know. I want him to be because I think he's earned the right to kind of see the other side of this, right? Good football and maybe some playoff games and things like that because he's given his heart and soul to this club. But we will see. The Saquon, that's another one. These are all good questions to have. That means we did well, we played well, and hopefully we're trending in the right direction.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, we all want Daniel Jones to succeed. This is the first time, as you said, that it seems like he actually has a scheme to work with. So I feel like this is kind of but it takes time. This is after 1 week, and I love how Brian Daboll definitely ripped him a little bit after that red zone interception.
I loved it
and just
absolutely.
Spoke to it. That's what it takes. Hard love sometimes. Like I feel like they kind of babied DJ the first couple of years. They just kind of let him do his thing, and now they're like leaning into him and saying like, you can't do this. Like, you were a professional quarterback. If you want to be good in this league, you cannot make that decision when the corner is staring you down. So
it was a bad throw.
It was a bad throw, but hopefully he just alleviates that moving forward. But that kind of wraps up this episode. Definitely touched on a lot of different topics, Saquon, and hopefully this team just continues to progress and show us the positives we need to see to be excited about the future. But Lawrence, I really appreciate you coming on, my man.
You bet.
It means a lot. Appreciate that a lot. And hopefully you have a fantastic rest of your day. And let's go Giants.
Yeah, Alex, I appreciate you having me.